Hey, Sean G here from Chasing the Truth. You're about to get some of the best of samples of shows I've done over the last 5 years. God bless y'all and enjoy.
Shows to the places that they had an episode filmed at, and I've tried to gather photographic evidence of the paranormal from those places. So, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the Red Garter in Williams, Arizona was one of the first that I did. The second one that I did was in Sedona, Arizona, and that was the Relics restaurant, and that was on an episode of the Dead Files.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one that I've done was in Jerome, Arizona, and that was on an episode of Ghost Adventures. So, without putting anybody down and without being negative about anything, all I want to do is to go to these places and see for myself what's there, photograph it, and publish it.
So did you, specifically these three places that you mentioned in Arizona and let's see, the one that Jerome, Arizona, did you find anything specific? I think you had touched Jerome, Arizona before, or maybe before. Did you find anything specific that was different than these previous investigators came in? Does that make sense what I just asked?
Yes. Now, primarily, I was able to watch the Ghost Adventure show, and primarily the place that they investigated was the Grand Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
But the secondary place was a commercial building that's very close to the Grand Hotel. And so I photographed both of those places, and I continued throughout Jerome, Arizona, because A, it's a small town, and B, its tourist trade is based on the fact that it is so haunted. And they believe that it is haunted because of the number of miners. There was a copper mine there because it sits on the side of a mountain called Cleopatra Hill. And there are so many miners that were injured and or killed in those mines that their ghosts are still there. Mm-hmm. And so I've gone to several of the shops, and one of the places that I went to was a place called the Firefly. Now, it's a shop. It's kind of eclectic stuff that's in there, and I got talking with the woman that owned it, and she told me to get downstairs and take a look at the photo that they had sitting on the floor down there. And I went down, I looked at it, I photographed it, and she told me the story of a 19-year-old boy, teenager, whatever you'd like to call him, young man, and he is in that photo, and he was killed by a man that came in to collect the rent. Now, the man that came in said, "Your rent is due, I'm here to collect." And all Walter said was, "We've already paid our rent." And the guy drew out his gun and shot him dead right there. So I was wondering if perhaps the spirit of Walter was there, and so I came back that evening after I talked with the owner, and I took a few pictures of the front of the shop. It wasn't open at the time, and in one of the photos in the display window, I get what appears to be a very similar looking face. Now, there's a glare right about the mouth region, but I swear the eyes look quite the same as what's in the photograph of the young man that was shot dead by the rent collector.
Oh, wow. So when was this man shot, or this kid?
Well, the photograph was taken 1908.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking that it was not too long after the photograph that he was killed.
Okay, now this is one of the photos that you sent me in the packet in the email. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that will definitely be posted with this podcast. I have seen it, and it definitely does look like a young man in period dress from the 1900s. So that is just amazing. That was one of the amazing photos that you sent me. Let's touch base on what kind of equipment you have. You mentioned that you had professional equipment. Do you have? You've got the. I'll let you go into your cameras, but we'll touch base with. Do you have EVPs or EMF detectors or heat sensing devices or anything like that that you use along with this stuff?
No, I've never used that stuff, and that's because I was a photographer, and going back to my introduction, being a skeptic, I wanted to see to believe, and so I've concentrated just on the photography aspect of capturing ghosts.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I wouldn't do that in the future or there's anything wrong with it, but for myself, for what I wanted to see the ghosts.
Great. So what kind of cameras do you use? Do you use the full spectrum cameras or just the SLR cameras or anything like that? What's your equipment that you use?
I use DSLRs,
and
yeah, okay.
Some
of them are modified, some of them aren't. They're very high-end cameras. My main camera is quite expensive. It was over $3,000, but I found that was necessary in order to get the detail in the photos that I was looking for.
Okay. So, have you had any battery drain with your cameras while you're out and about? I've heard tell that a few people experience with paranormal encounters that their batteries drain really quickly, like fully charged down to nothing in a matter of moments. Have you ever experienced something like that?
No, I haven't, but I have experienced a whole lot of other things, but just not. They've been nice enough to leave my camera alone so that I've been able to take their pictures.
Okay, yeah. So, tell me a little bit about, well, you just touched on one of my next question. What have you experienced other than click and look at the paranormal activity on your picture that you just took? What have you experienced?
Well, let's see, at Edgewood Plantation here in southeastern Virginia, I've experienced being tapped on the shoulder. There's a place up in Gloucester called Abington Church, and it was there I smelled a woman's perfume. And at that particular time, I looked around to make sure that there were no flowers to create that smell, and this was after the first frost, and all of the flowers had been frozen, dead, and so that could not have been the source. But I did smell lavender there, and I captured a photo of a woman looking out from the church, so I can't help but wonder if that was her. But I've felt the cold chill down my spine when I've photographed the Williamsburg jail and a few of the other places. But I would have to say my most profound experience was on a road called Crawford Road. And I would have to say, in my subjective opinion, that's one of the most haunted roads in the country. So let me give you a little bit of background so that you understand where I'm coming from. So Crawford Road, it runs right through a part of the battlefield that was in Yorktown, and it's where the French forces were stationed when they were bombarding the English forces right before the Yorktown victory. So there were obviously French soldiers killed in that area and buried in that area also. Now, in the Civil War...
Hey folks, thanks for listening to this best of sample of some of my 5 years in doing this radio show podcast called Chasing the Truth. Please visit iamdarkwaters.com, or you can email me at seanG@iamdarkwaters.com. And my numbers and links are in the description below. God bless y'all, and I'll catch you on the flip side.